let me know when we can start.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Looks great. And
Sound good? Okay.
Sounds good. I tested it during that conversation.
Sounds good. All right. Are we rolling?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Welcome everybody. I'm Alexy Khrabrov, the organizer of Reactive Systems meetup. It's a new meetup about everything explained in Reactive Manifesto, everything about observables. So there's a whole ecosystem of Reactive Systems. And today we have with us Ben Christensen. He's a software engineer at Netflix. He's creator of RX Java and a lot of applications working with this. We're very happy to have you, Ben. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So you're on Edge Systems team at Netflix. Can you tell us a little bit about what that team is doing and how the whole reactive stack came to be?
Sure. So the Edge Systems team at Netflix is responsible for it's the layer of server-side systems that faces the internet. So all the incoming traffic from devices, from the user interfaces and clients that you play back movies and TV shows on with Netflix, they come in through that layer. And so it's the routing and public APIs and the hosting of all the endpoints for basically all the functionality for Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm involved in the architecture and platform and infrastructure of those teams. Those systems. It's made up of a few different teams, and also the operations of it.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit, for folks who don't know, what reactive systems are and how Netflix became kind of a good use case for reactive systems?
Sure. So reactive systems, in a purer sense, are ones that, as their name implies, react to data and events as they occur, rather than imperatively telling it what to do at any given point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And in practice, there's a broad spectrum of what that means as you apply it. The reason why it became interesting to us is a few years ago, as we were trying to optimize the performance in our systems, we realized that we needed to adopt concurrency, primarily for I/O, for concurrent execution of various different network requests to compose together the back-end systems. And the primary driving factor for that is that we were trying to move our device traffic patterns to be more coarse-grained so that they would fetch more data all at once, and we didn't want to make that all be sequential and increase the user latency. And so while pursuing a more concurrent approach to implementing our web service endpoints, we decided that asynchrony is where we needed to go, and to do that we looked at how we could have an abstraction for composing those that wasn't just callbacks. Mm-hmm. And that led us to the reactive model, and over the years we've matured a lot in our thinking and in our execution of that.
So how much of Netflix is now using your reactive stack?
It depends on if you talk about that as knowingly or unknowingly. So unknowingly, it's actually running all over the place because it's, for example, Hystrix, which is our fault tolerance layer, bulkheading layer, is now all implemented using the reactive patterns, and that's used throughout the company. But most of the teams still don't actually program in a reactive manner. Mm-hmm. Most of the middle tier systems, they existed long before we chose to start adopting. And the migration path from the imperative style to the reactive style is a non-trivial one. And the majority of teams have not decided that it is worth them making those changes. Mm-hmm. However, at the Edge Systems layer, if you were to split our code base in half into two horizontal layers, the bottom half is still very much imperative and pull-based because for legacy reasons. But then we layered everything on top as fully reactive, so all of our APIs are reactive. And then the next layer down of the devices and clients, they also, the majority of them also use reactive patterns in JavaScript. In how they interact with us through the web services.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's a multilingual kind of setup.
Yeah, so we use the reactive patterns in Java, Groovy, and JavaScript.
So I noticed you guys are basically, very consistently improving RX Java ecosystem. So we had a meetup a couple years ago to Save Scala at Rackspace, and since then, basically, we succeeded in kind of, moving this technology through our organization, which is a no mean feat. Like Netflix is a big company. We know companies kind of are not, become more agile as they grow. So I'm just very curious, how did you manage? Right, to introduce this complex technology, to kind of evangelize it, get a lot of people use it. What are kind of ingredients to success of this? Like, what are some tricks you kind of, what happens which enabled you to move this technology through the company?
Well, for one thing, we never attempted to force it down anyone's throat, and that's why, even to this day, it's not every team that's using it. So the important factor is that we applied it where we felt it was needed. We demonstrated the success we were having, and we talked about it. And then other teams either said that's interesting, but we don't really need to adopt that, or some other team said that's great, and they started to adopt it all on their own. And to make that so that it scaled, we invested quite a bit in documentation and tutorials and those types of things. And in fact, the very thing that made it a successful open source project is what helped us with the teams internally who wanted to adopt it and use it, because in effect, we actually treated them the same as anyone else, where here's the documentation you need, here's how it works, here's where the artifacts live and how you pull it into your code base. And then the other way is just internal training. We spent a lot of time on making sure that we provided in the early days, not so much any longer, but in the early days, we would have like internal workshops and tutorials and sessions like that.
I remember you invested in documentation, right?
A lot, yeah.
And did you hire a technical writer actually to do this? Yes.
In fact, we still have him, so 3 years later, he's still working with us. In fact, if you're going to do an open source project, it's the way to do it. We commit code, he comes through and fixes all of our bad English and finishes flushing it out, and it makes a huge difference.
So you have a GitHub hook basically for the technical writer to come in and
That's how it feels like, yes. So he's got commit privileges, and so he just sweeps through and takes care of the Java docs, diagrams, and the wiki pages and the website content.
This is great. So I think this is awesome. Like, this is an awesome tip that if you kind of invest in educational materials, people are gonna kind of
the code in and of itself. You can have great code, but if it's not accessible, usable, understandable, if you don't have all that stuff, it might as well not exist as far as most people are concerned.
How much of external teams do you see kind of picking this up, and how many kind of questions do you see from non-Netflix people implementing this stack?
Actually, far more external than internal. It's especially been large in the Android community. So in the Android community, like, there's a lot of very big brand names that people would recognize who use it in their applications. And just as examples, the GitHub project, we've had well over 100 contributors who've committed code to it. There's dozens of people who have written blog posts and spoken at conferences without any instigation from our part. It's got thousands of stars. And so, like, all of that had then led a vibrant community on Stack Overflow and on the mailing list, GitHub issues and all that stuff. And so it's actually become a pretty vibrant community.
It's really cool. How do you manage to support all this?
Honestly, I ask for people's help because I'm only one person. There's only so much I can do. And so it's very community driven in answering each other's questions. And so I weigh in when I can, or when I see something bubble up and keep kind of becoming something that needs a little bit more attention. But in general, in the first year, it was very much me driving it a lot. In the last year and a half ish, it's very much community driven now. And in fact, in the last 6 months, far more of the commits, the code, is coming from the community than it is from myself or anyone at Netflix.
I still checked it. Still by far the lead committer.
On version 2.x, which is happening, David Karnock, he basically just ported everything in like 3 weeks. So on the 2.x branch, he will far and away be the lead.
Right. I'll check the main repo.
Yeah, so main is still the production-worthy one. We're working on version 2. And so if you flip over to that and take a look at its committer, it's all David Karnock.
Cool. We're going to check it out.
Yeah.
Well, so I think my last question will be kind of, if this is a very interesting, evolving area, and obviously there is a lot of information. So if somebody wants to kind of play with this, right, should they just head to RxJava repository? Are there kind of starter projects there? Like, what's a good entry point for newbies who kind of want to check out the reactive systems?
So actually, there is a project written by Jafar Hussain, who is actually the one who introduced me to reactive programming. And it's done in JavaScript, so it's very easy to get started with. You can do it right in a browser. And it's at the github.com/reactivex/learnrx, I believe.
Okay.
And it basically is a walkthrough in progressing difficulty. And it's a great way to step into it. And it starts actually teaching you how to do function composition over iterables, synchronous iterables, and then starts to flip you into showing how it all of a sudden becomes async, and the two are duals of each other. And so instead of trying to teach you both function composition and asynchrony at the same time, it starts with function composition, gets you used to things like map and flat map and stuff, and then all of a sudden flips on you and shows you, wait a second, it's the exact same coding style, except all of a sudden it just became async.
Interesting.
And so actually, that is a very good way of learning the concepts, because the concepts then apply to any language you're in. On the RxJava side, to show something a little bit more practical for people, Reactive.io points to a GitHub repo where it kind of demonstrates how we typically use RxJava at Netflix, which is incoming web services that compose multiple backend web services, and it's something that you can actually launch on your laptop. It's got like 8 microservices running and shows all the I/O between them in composition. And so Reactive.io is a good one for the Java side and showing how it fits into more real-world use.
This is exciting. So thank you very much for sharing this. We are looking forward to your talk, and we are looking forward to kind of following the Rex progress at Netflix.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.